position players right now, one guy could probably pencil in for sure that has a spot on this team. That's going to be Orlando Arcia. And probably Lewis Brinson a close second. But other than that, like you said, who knows who's going to be on this team in 2 to 3 years. I would love to see them sign Travis Shaw long term. That's been probably one of the top finds that Stearns had this past offseason trading for him. He's just been bringing a lot to the third base position.
I mean, guys, could be, in an MVP type of race. I mean, you're right. I mean, it's been special to see that, and they got him for a song. So there's no doubt. I think first base. I mean, Eric Thames was a fun story in April, but let's be honest. I think you kind of know what you get, with him. Ryan Braun, I mean, he's not leaving, and I think, the not being able to stay on the field and all of that. I mean, clearly that hurt, any trade opportunity, and probably, the Brewers wanting, a lump sum for him. But you're right. I mean, there's not a ton of guys. I think Hader's a guy that definitely is going to be on this roster in some capacity. So, and look at VR last year. There's a great example of a guy that played out of his mind, bet on himself and lost, turned down that contract. I mean, how stupid are you? How are you feeling this year? I mean, let's be honest. And he's been terrible. He has been an absolute disappointment. But of course, the leadoff spot has been a very disappointing spot. Sogard, was really good prior to his injury, and he's got to figure that out. So, hey, again, we're talking about this. It's almost August, and we're actually talking about legitimate, positional, races within our team, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's very cool to see. Now, I want to mention it's August, and with August, that means NFL training camps start.
Oh, yeah.
Packers a little bit before we wrap this up. So Packers, they had a pretty active offseason, which was kind of unlike them with Carlos Bennett, Lance Kendricks, Jahari Evans, just to name. I think those were the 3 outside free agents that they brought in. I'm not sure if I forgot anybody. And then
you got Ricky Jean Francois, and then you brought in Devon House too.
Yeah, Devon House, I always forget about because he was in Green Bay before. So
Sure.
I guess I forget that he left sometimes. And how can I forget about Ricky Jean Francois? He owns Dunkin' Donuts franchises. I should remember that.
That's a smart man.
Yeah, very active offseason for Thompson. And for me, biggest question mark is not the secondary, which I'm sure it is for a lot of people, but it's more the pass rush, especially the linebacker position as a whole, because I look at the linebacker position, no depth, really anywhere.
No.
You're asking for, you have Nick Perry, Clay Matthews, J-Ron Elliott, 3 guys who have been hurt most of the past couple years, and then a rookie in Beagle who's hurt, and then Fracco, who knows you got with him, and then you got 2 middle linebackers or 3 middle linebackers that haven't really shown to be anything special yet. So is there a position on your team, on the team, that really concerns you at all?
Absolutely, I agree with you. I think the secondary is actually going to be fine. I think you have, and I include the safeties in on that. I think with Burnett and Clinton Dix, and by the way, you're already seeing it. You're going to see Burnett play more inside linebacker. I mean, I think this defense is, I don't know if it's exciting or if it's scary because they continue to tinker with it, but we all know that the NFL has gone so pass heavy that you got to find playmakers that are able to run with tight ends, being able to run with running backs and do that. And, let's be honest, we've got, and I like A.J. Hawk, so I'm not ripping on A.J. Hawk at all. I think he was a wonderful Packer for us. I think, if he wasn't picked that high, nobody would ever criticized him, but I mean that's another story. But I think you've got some guys in Jake Ryan, Blake Martinez, and Martinez was just swimming, just trying to keep his head above water. But I think you got kind of those prototypical Ted Thompson inside linebacker guys, but they've told us they don't put a lot of emphasis on the inside backers, and that's just not who they go after. I totally agree with you with our outside linebackers. I mean, Kyler Fackrell, who knows? J-Ron Elliott is a guy. Vince Beagle's coming in injured. I think he'll probably, be able to, to give us, some reps. But Clay Matthews has not been able to stay healthy. That shoulder injury last year absolutely killed him. He was worthless. Nick Perry had a classic contract season. I like Nick Perry. But, man, those two guys, you don't have Peppers anymore. You don't have Dayton Jones, which I don't know, quite frankly, I don't really care. But you don't have some of those guys back there. And if Matthews goes down, if Perry goes down, they're hosed. There's no way they are going to be able to get after the quarterback. And I like our interior linemen. I like Kenny Clark. I like Mike Daniels. I really like this Ricky Jean Francois. I think Guyan probably won't even make the team. I love the draft pick out of Auburn. You got nasty, big guys, in the middle. But man, if we're running the 3-4, and if our outside linebackers can't get it done, I'm with you. I think the offense better be scoring 40 points a game. Flat out.
Yeah, they better definitely be, because it doesn't matter who you put back in the secondary. If those front seven guys aren't getting after the quarterback, you're going to have Deion Sanders in his prime and
sure,
whatever corner in his prime you want to think of back there. It's going to be very tough for anybody. Now, jumping to the offense, and I know he hasn't been in Green Bay for very long, but Martellus Bennett's very quickly becoming one of my favorite players on this team already. And I know, he kind of got a bad rep in Chicago a little bit, and, with that situation with Cutler, who could blame him? But
right.
I'm just liking what I'm seeing both on and off the field that he's bringing to this team, that, from a leadership perspective. What are your thoughts on him early?
Well, I thought it was a slam dunk. They absolutely upgraded from Jared Cook. And listen, Jared Cook was a fun player for us last year. He single-handedly, with that catch, allowed us to really win that game in Dallas. And I'll never forget that. I loved his players article that he wrote. Good guy. I was glad he signed on, I think with Oakland or whatever. So no bad blood on that. But the Packers upgraded, and they need to stretch the field in the middle. I think you're starting to see that our wide receivers weren't getting the push on the outside, and that also goes for Jordy Nelson. I think you get a guy like Martellus Bennett, who not only can block, who's an amazing blocker, but let's be honest, we struggled in the red zone a lot last year. There was a lot of struggles, and even though we went on that run, that didn't necessarily cover up some of the red zone struggles. You put a guy like that, on the goal line, that's just another beast, type of target. He's fun, he's quirky, and you know what? That's fun for now. But if he doesn't produce, then I'm going to look and go, all right, come on, let's get it done. But I have no doubt. I really don't. I think he's going to find his groove, with Rodgers, and this offense should absolutely be dynamic. Are they going to put up the points like they did in 2011? I don't know. Hopefully, they can also get, solidify the running back position too, where you can balance it out a little bit. It's always going to be a pass-first team, but when the weather turns crappy, and let's also be honest, the playoffs, everyone's got pretty much a good defense in the playoffs, and typically defense is going to trump offense, and so my hope is that they've got enough firepower that they can be balanced, because I really think that's going to be the key late in the year, and especially into January and hopefully February.
Yeah, and you mentioned passing league, and the running game hasn't really been much of Mike McCarthy's staple at all during his time in Green Bay. In fact, last year they went through a stretch where they didn't even have a running back really on the roster when Eddie Lacy went down. Now,
right.
Ty Montgomery is the full-time running back who's been struggling in camp so far to pick up that the blocking assignments a little bit, and then he got three rookies behind him. So, are you as concerned as I am at that running back position? Because I look at Ty Montgomery, running back who never, hasn't played running back in a while. He runs
right.
awfully upright. And when you're a running back and you run upright, you expose yourself to some big hits. And then you got 3 rookies under him. So that just concerns me a little bit because we all saw what happened last year when Lacey and Starks went down, which I thought it was a mistake, only keeping 2 backs after camp last year. When you have 2 injury-prone running backs as your 1s and 2. Are you as concerned there as I am?
I want to see more. I want to see how the camp, goes along. I think Montgomery, his body type, his skill set kind of represents, where that newer running back, prototype is kind of cut from. You still have, the Ripper. You still have Ripkowski that obviously can help in the backfield as well. So I think, right now, I want to give it a little bit more time. So I guess my answer to you is not super concerned right now, but as we start approaching the preseason games to see, what kind of role Montgomery is going to have back there. If he doesn't, if they struggle, I mean, listen, there probably are still some veterans on the street that they could bring in. And the other thing is, I mean, we're never going to be a running team because the guys that we draft on the offensive line are athletic, pass blocking people. They're not the road graders. They're not the guys that are just gonna dominate. Much like San Francisco did, several years ago, and even Seattle for that matter. So I kind of look at the running back position with a grain of salt, kind of take it with a grain of salt and go, well, we'll have to kind of see what happens. But I think to your point, it's definitely a position that I'm really looking forward to watching in the preseason. Which one of these young buck rookies are going to step up? Who's going to be Mr. August? Who's going to grab that role? And I also think in the wide receiver spot too. Listen, drafting Dupree and drafting this Yancey kid out of Purdue, how many wide receivers are they going to carry? I mean, we know who are going to be locks. I mean, Jeff Janis is a guy that, clearly can't pick up the playbook, but he certainly is a great special teams guy. And it looks like they're really trying to convert Trevor Davis with Micah Hyde gone, kind of being the guy back there. So that's going to be interesting to see. The good part is the Packers are probably not going to have to cut a ton of, there's probably, I guess the way I want to say it is there's probably not going to be a ton of surprises. I can't imagine when it's time to cut down, but what Ted Thompson decides, position-wise, how many to keep, that'll be interesting. But I think barring injury and a slow start, this team really has the potential to run with, Dallas, to run with Atlanta, when it comes to the NFC. I think they should be there, and we need to get more home games. They are so important. It's time for that. So my hope is that they can win games early. I mean, last year was an absolute disaster. And let's be honest, they limped and were just gassed going into that championship game. I mean, the guys were on the, basically on the stretcher, on that game. But you go back and how poorly they played, and they had to basically go in playoff mode for 6 weeks? That's unacceptable to me. I mean, that last year, is a great story, but when you look back at it, they had so many self-inflicted injuries. They can't do that this year.
Yeah, and they got lucky last year too. That as when they got to 4-6, and then you had the Rodgers run the table comment at that same time, right. The Vikings got ice cold, and if the Vikings don't go ice cold, do they even make the playoffs? So
great point.
Quick prediction for. I know it's way too early to make predictions. You don't even know how the roster is going to shape up yet until the end of the month. But quick prediction, how far do you see this team going? Because I look at the NFC, you got the Falcons who I don't want to downplay that Super Bowl hangover, especially with the way they lost. You always see that Super Bowl hangover.
I think it's going to be there.
But you got Dallas, who has a lot of off-the-field problems, even more so it seems like every